cover the last lecture of our invertebrates. Invertebrates Part 4, the invertebrate Deuterostomes. So the two phyla we'll be talking about are the echinoderms and the chordates. We will not be covering the hemichordata. As the name suggests, the members of the clade Deuterostomia have deuterostome development. So we can go ahead and just fill that in right now. We'll cover their body cavities as we get to each phylum. I don't have anything super exciting to tell you about the clade Deuterostomia, so I don't have an introductory slide to this clade. But since we filled in some information for the other major groups within Bilateria, we can go ahead and do that here as well. So within animals within this clade Deuterostomia are bilateral triploblasts, and unlike the Lophotrochozoa and Ectozozoa, all of the members are going to be deuterostomes or have deuterostome development, which means if we review all the way back to our last lecture on gastrula, this is as gastrulation happens, one side of the animal starts to fold in. This is called the blastopore right here. And if the mouth develops second, that means as this continues folding in, the mouth is going to be on this end of the animal eventually. And that means that because the mouth develops second, that's what deuterostome means, that means that that first opening, the blastula, becomes the anus. Okay, and we don't have any fun facts about this clade like we did with ectozozoans and Lophotrochozoans, so I will just tell you that the phyla that we'll be talking about are the chordates or the chordata, which include us as humans, and our sister phylum, the echinodermata. So humans are more similar to a sea star than we are to an octopus, as octopi are in the clade Lophotrochozoa. Okay, so as we move on now to the phylum Echinodermata, I want to point out a couple of things. Here in your lecture course pack, I didn't leave you a lot of room for the lower level clades, and we're going to cross that out. We're just going to go through the examples of different types of echinoderms. So just the common names for our examples will be good enough for this unit. So we just have a little bit left to cover in our lecture outline. We're already on page 12. And for our taxonomic outline, you can see that within the phylum Echinodermata, there are no class names listed. So even though the PowerPoints will give the class names, you will not have to know the different classes and the examples that belong to each class for the test. All right, and then just two groups of invertebrates left. We have our landslits and tunicates as our examples of invertebrate chordates. So these will be our chordates that have features of chordates, but they do not have a backbone. So next week we will be covering the vertebrates, which are all chordates. All of the vertebrates will be chordates, but not all chordates will be vertebrates. All right, so here we are with the phylum Echinodermata. The body feature plan that we have not yet discussed is that echinoderms are coelomates, so that means they have a body cavity fully lined by mesoderm tissue. The ancestors in larval stages are truly bilateral, and the adult stages, some of them may appear radial, like this sea urchin right here, but if you look at the echinoderm here, or the sea star, for example, you'll see that it's not a true radial symmetry. So if you go across the body, one side is not a mirror image of the other. That. So we may call it secondary radial symmetry or the appearance of radial symmetry, but for the sake of our body plan information, we will say that they are truly bilateral. So if you picture this like as a SpongeBob Patrick, we've got, you know, a left side and a right side. If we split it down the middle this way, we would have an equal left and right side. Okay. So for taxonomic diversity and phylogeny, the phylum Echinodermata has 7,000 species, and there are 5 classes. All of them end in oidea. So if you see those terms, it means it's a class within the phylum Echinodermata, but you're not going to have to know the individual names or the examples of that fit within each class. So you do not have to know the names of these. All right. Some echinoderms can be very fast moving. For the most part, I would say most echinoderms are slow moving, whereas there are also some that are completely sessile. So the range of motility in echinoderm species can be anywhere from sessile or attached and not moving at all to slow moving to fast. Echinoderms are interesting in that they are the only phylum that we have talked about that are exclusively found in marine environments. And individuals are male or female and can reproduce by sexual reproduction, but there are a couple of examples of asexual reproduction as well. So there are some species that can fragment an arm and then completely regenerate either that arm or a completely new living animal from that fragmented arm. So this is one way that echinoderms can reproduce asexually. There are also some species that can, like the rotifers, reproduce asexually by parthenogenesis. So this is when a female reproduces and gives birth to another female from an unfertilized egg. All right, so these are 2 different forms of asexual reproduction found in some species of echinoderms. Here's a picture that shows that regeneration, right? So if a sea star loses an arm, that arm can regenerate. That in itself is not asexual reproduction, the regeneration of a missed body part. What is considered asexual reproduction is, let's say an arm splits off, here's the arm, and then a whole entire sea star develops from that arm. So an entire sea star can regenerate from an arm that has been fragmented off of another animal. Okay, let's go through our examples relatively quickly just to look at the pictures. Sea stars and sea daisies are examples. So sea stars are what we would commonly call starfish, but as you know, they are not actually fish. So we'll call them sea stars. Brittle stars are the example of some of the fast-moving echinoderms. I've seen them in an aquarium, so I've seen them dart from one side of the aquarium to another when they were being fed. Then we have our sea urchins and sand dollars, feather stars, and sea cucumbers. And here's a better picture of a sea cucumber, a really interesting one. This I got from the National Geographic website, and you can see the sea cucumber on the seafloor. Okay, so structural features of echinoderms. Starting with the digestive system, the echinoderms do have a complete digestive tract from mouth to anus. But what's really interesting is that even though it's a short digestive system, each arm, every single arm, is packed with digestive glands, secreting digestive enzymes into the stomach. So lots of digestive glands. It doesn't show it in this one, that shows the gonads. We've got digestive glands going into the stomach right here. And the stomach is eversible, which means that it can kind of come out almost like a parachute and eject. And the stomach can even slip inside of a clam and digest a clam from the inside out. And so all these digestive glands secrete their digestive enzymes that help the echinoderm eat its prey from the outside and then bring all of those nutrients in. And then digestive waste will come out of the anus. So we've got a complete digestive system. It's very short, but very effective. A notable feature would be the endoskeleton. You can see the spines coming off of the epidermis layer from within, which is why we call it the endoskeleton. And then also, in terms of the respiratory system, next to the spines, you see all these little gills right here. And since the gills cover the entire surface of all of the arms on the dorsal side, then that provides a lot of space for gas exchange to occur. So the respiratory system would be the gills. The circulatory system is different than other animal phyla. It's not a true open or closed circulatory system, and it doesn't pump a fluid like blood. In fact, the circulation is controlled by something called a water vascular system. So this is sort of a replacement of a circulatory system, and it doesn't just circulate fluids and nutrients, it also controls motility and controls the movement of the tube feet. So tube feet would also be a notable structure to note for the echinoderms. And tube feet are found on the other side of the sea star, on the ventral side. Right. And here's a video that shows those tube feet in motion, controlled by the water vascular system. All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to move on to the phylum Chordata. The chordates are bilateral triploblasts with deuterostome development, and they are also coelomates. So they have a body cavity fully lined by mesoderm tissue. The taxonomic diversity of the phylum Chordata is 57,000 species. And so I always like to note that this is much less than the arthropods and even the mollusks. I tend to think of chordates as the most diverse, but that's because when I look out my window and I look at the birds and I look at the squirrels, chordates just happen to be what I see the most often, or what I notice the most often. But just because I notice them, it's probably because I'm biased. I am a chordate and I see others that are like myself. But they are definitely not the most diverse of the animal kingdom. A little bit on the phylogeny or evolution. Chordates evolved during the Cambrian explosion over 500 million years ago, or 530 million years ago. They were all fully aquatic, and the examples that we're going to talk about today are aquatic, but some of the vertebrates made their way to land about 365 million years ago, and we'll talk about that in our next lecture during chapter 34. As far as lifestyle, ecology, and reproduction goes, so the invertebrate chordates are going to be aquatic, the lancelets and the tudicates. Individuals are male or female. Of course, they reproduce by sexual reproduction, and they do have a complete digestive tract from mouth to anus, a closed circulatory system, which means they have a heart and blood vessels that go in a complete circuit. And as far as the respiratory system is concerned, they have either gills or lungs, depending on whether they're aquatic or terrestrial. And so for our invertebrate chordates, they'll have gills. All right, so before we get into the two examples, you'll see I've already started to discuss the body structure and function with the digestive, circulatory, and respiratory system. Let's continue with that, and I would like to talk about all four features that or 4 features that all chordates have in common. So these would be under the notable structures because these are characteristics of all chordates. And so you can see here's the complete digestive system from mouth to anus. Here is where the gills are going to be. So there's our digestive and our respiratory system. And it doesn't show it in the picture, but we do have a closed circulatory system. All right, so these 4 features. I'm actually going to start with the dorsal hollow nerve cord, which is number 2 here on this list. And so chordates are distinct from all other animal phyla in that our spinal cord or hollow nerve cord is hollow, filled with fluid, and it's on the dorsal side of the animal instead of the ventral. So that is unique to chordates. And then in between the GI tract, which we have here, and the dorsal hollow nerve cord, which in humans would be our spinal cord, in between we have a notochord. And the notochord is a flexible, fluid-filled rod that supports the nerve cord, or is found just below it. I kind of covered it with my drawing. So here's our notochord. Okay, the pharyngeal slits or clefts. This is the 3rd feature, and these are found in all chordates at some point in our development. And in aquatic chordates, these will develop into the gills. In a human, for example, these will disappear eventually, but they are found at some point during our developmental stage. So all 4 of these features are going to appear at some point during the development of the animal. Adults won't have all 4 features in many cases. So for example, a human adult won't have pharyngeal slits or clefts, and also we'll probably lose our muscular postanal tail, which is the 4th feature of all chordates, is this muscular postanal tail. So that just means it's behind the anus. I wanted to point out where the notochord is in humans. So this is a picture of a vertebra, or a single piece of the backbone. And now remember, we're invertebrates. We are still talking about invertebrates, but I just really wanted to jump ahead real quick to ourselves and show you that here's our spinal cord with the gray and white matter. And here's the dorsal side, or our backs. So this side over here would be closer to our stomachs or closer to our digestive tract. And so in front, or ventral to the spinal cord, is a different part of the vertebrae that's found in between our spinal cord and our gastrointestinal tract. And so this is what the notochord is in the human body, or what it has turned into. All right, so now let's talk about the developmental features, or not developmental features. Let's talk about our 2 examples of chordates that are invertebrates. We have our lancelets and our tunicates. The lancelets and the tunicates are both going to be small aquatic invertebrate chordates. So that's what they have in common. Another thing they have in common is that the pharyngeal slits will turn into the gills. So that's that right there. You can see that the picture of this lancelet right here is very similar to the picture of the ancient or ancestral chordates, where you can see those 4 characteristics: the pharyngeal slits, the dorsal hollow nerve cord, the notochord, and the muscular postanal tail. As far as lifestyle and ecology goes, they are aquatic. The larval stage will be swimming and found in the water. The adult stage, on the other hand, is the stage that burrows in the sediments. The tunicate is very similar looking in its larval stage, so you can see the complete digestive system, and you can see the features: the dorsal hollow nerve cord, the notochord, the pharyngeal slits, and the muscular postanal tail. And like the lancelets, they're small invertebrate chordates. The larval stage will be swimming and will have all those features of the chordate, but the adult stage loses a lot of those features and is basically just a feeding tube with an in-current and an ex-current siphon for water flow and a digestive system to eat or digest food. Ingest and digest their food. And that adult stage may also be sessile. All right, that is it for our invertebrates. Let's finish by completing our chart of body plan. Our echinoderms and our chordates are coelomates. And I would like to also point out that in our lecture outline, if we go through, here's our chordate lecture. I would put those 4 features of a chordate right here under notable structures. And over the weekend and before next Wednesday, right, I'm giving you Monday and Tuesday to also finish the invertebrates. I want you to note that there are a list of questions in the concepts. And if you can go through these questions and write out your answers to them, that'll be a very useful tool, not just to study and learn, but also to use as you take the 4th exam. Also, in our open review session this upcoming Wednesday for class at 11 a.m., if you don't understand any of these questions or if you need assistance in answering them, you can come to me with those questions on Wednesday. You can also post them to the Unit 4 discussion board. That is all for today. I hope you all are healthy and safe and have a great weekend.